making headlines on our broadcast tonight. With a paradigm shift in global economics, the key to riding out the challenges facing the Korean economy lies in science and technology, says President Park Geun-hye, which is why the country will kick off a nationwide science and technology innovation project. Seoul's finance chief vows to come up with measures to put Asia's fourth largest economy's exports back on track, noting Korea's weak recovery momentum as the global economy enters a low-growth cycle. Brazil's Senate votes to suspend President Dilma Rousseff and begin an impeachment trial against her amid the country's worst economic crisis since the 1930s and with only 85 days to go until the Rio Olympics. NEWSCENTER begins right now. It's 9 in Washington, 2 in the afternoon in London, and 10 on a Thursday evening here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to our viewers all across the globe. You're watching Arirang News Center. President Park Geun-hye has once again identified science and technology as a key to riding out the challenges facing the Korean economy. The first strategic meeting for science and technology took place at the nation's top office today, where key officials and tech sector representatives and President Park decided to establish a control tower for the nation's related policies. Our Song Ji-sun reports the government will seek to better manage and boost research and development.
The tech sector is on the cusp of a fourth industrial revolution, but Korea is stuck in a nutcracker situation between high-tech countries and emerging economies, which are catching up fast with the developments in Korea. At the first strategic meeting for science and technology, President Park stressed that the two fields are the basis of the creative economy, and reforming the nation's research and development system is the key to Seoul regain its edge in the global market.
앞으로 과학기술 전략회의를 통해서 핵심 과학기술 정책과 사업에 대해 톱다운 방식의 전략을 마련하고 부처 간 이견 대립 사안들을 조정해 나가면서 우리 R&D 시스템의 근본적 혁신도 추진해 나갈 것입니다.
Projects requiring long-term government oversight will be carried out in a top-down manner, but private projects for research and development will work from the bottom up, meaning they will reflect market demand so they can quickly adapt to fast-developing technologies. Another key goal is restructuring research and development resources, and there will be major reforms for each project. Funding and other forms of support for all government-led projects will now be reviewed at the outset to maximize efficiency. Reflecting global trends in technology and Seoul's policy directions, the government will also designate strategic projects on a national level. These projects will be accompanied by a package of support that ranges from tax benefits to deregulation. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, under the new system, science and tech projects will be selected based on a fundamental change in the way the country selects, evaluates, and allocates budget for research and development. Our tech correspondent Kim Ji-yeon with details.
Despite the large proportion of state funding for research and development, more than $16.3 billion for this year alone, the government believes the money isn't being spent in a way that will advance science and technology and make the country a leader in the fourth industrial revolution. It often takes at least 2 years before projects receive R&D funding, which lags behind rapidly changing IT trends, in particular those related to the Internet of Things, big data, and artificial intelligence. On top of that, clusters of projects that are underway by state and private research institutions, universities, and industries have often overlapped with each other or with other government projects. That's why the government wants to bring prospective projects and related ministries together under a new R&D model that's similar to the U.S. DARPA project and Japan's cross-ministerial strategic innovation promotion program. From there, it would designate strategic projects in IT and allocate and manage available resources from the top.
Under the new system, related agencies will have different goals to direct their R&D funding. Universities will be focused on the development of basic research and training young researchers, while research institutions will focus on the development of open source and proprietary technology, and the industrial sector will be focused on the commercialization of the technology.
Under the system, researchers will only need to submit research proposals of less than 5 pages, a drastic reduction from the previous 100, helping them focus on their research instead of spending an undue amount of time and effort on administrative work. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho hopes that the country will host more international economic events like the annual meeting of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the African Development Bank. He has also expressed the need to save Korea's slowing exports through the newly opened Iranian market, among others. Our Oh Jung-hee has more.
Korea's chief economic policymaker has a grand ambition to host the annual meeting of the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank in Seoul next year. During an overseas economic policy meeting on Thursday, Korea's finance minister Yoo Il-ho said the hosting the event will help improve the country's status on the global stage and help cater local firms' advance to such regions. China-led AIIB, formally launched earlier this year, is comprised of 57 founding member countries, including Korea, that holds the 5th largest stake among member nations. Yu added that he will also push to host the African Development Bank in 2018 as a move to extend ties with African countries. The finance minister also touched base on the country's slowing economy driven by ailing exports and investments on the back of an extended sluggish global economy.
A new breakthrough is essential to revive the vitality of exports. We should realize the new overseas opportunities into business outcomes and provide fresh momentum to our economy.
In April, Korea's exports, a key driving force of the nation's economy, dropped 11.2%, protracting its losing streak for 16 straight months. Minister Yu then spoke of the lucrative Iranian market, saying that it could be one of the best opportunities for Korean exporters. Citing that the recent visit by President Park Geun-hye to Iran led to inking memorandums of understanding on joint projects worth some $37 billion, Finance Minister added that the government has to find ways to recognize such opportunities and contribute to fueling fresh memorandum to the economy. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Now, over in domestic politics, leaders of the 3 main political parties are set for a meeting with the president at the nation's top office tomorrow. Ahead of the scheduled meeting, her senior secretary for political affairs made an appearance at Parliament today to ensure everything is in order for the dialogue. Our Park Ji-won reports from the National Assembly.
The senior presidential secretary for political affairs, Hyun Gi-hwan, visited Parliament twice on Thursday, the day before a meeting between President Park Geun-hye and the floor leaders of 3 main political parties set for Friday.
I came here to listen to what they have to say and find out if there's anything we need to prepare before the meeting. We haven't set an agenda yet, and anything could be on the table.
Hyun met with ruling Saenuri Party floor leader Chung Jin-seok and minor opposition People's Party floor leader Park Ji-won and spoke on the phone with the main opposition Minju Party floor leader Woo Sang-ho. The Minju Party is in the midst of a 2-day convocation with its new lawmakers in the southwestern city of Gwangju. The meeting is part of the party's efforts to win back support from the traditional liberal stronghold after it lost all 8 parliamentary seats to the minor opposition People's Party in the general election in April. Gwangju is a symbolic city for the liberal parties as it was the site of one of the country's most representative democratic movements in 1980. Meanwhile, People's Party leaders and lawmakers visited an army base near the DMZ, the de facto inner Korean border, in a move seen as representing the party's commitment to security issues. The party vowed to improve the quality of life for the country's soldiers and review the defense budget to ensure the funds are being allocated properly. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, shifting gears, as North Korea continues its nuclear threats, South Korea and the U.S. remain firmly on the same page when it comes to curbing Pyongyang's provocations. The two allies held a biannual high-level security talks in Washington, where Seoul and Washington saw eye to eye on the need to continue to exert pressure on the regime to give up its nuclear weapons program. Our Connie Kim has more on what was discussed at the meeting.
South Korea and the U.S. reiterated their mutual cooperation on deterring threats coming from North Korea and will continue to seek various ways to curb its provocations. Wrapping up the two-day Korea-U.S. integrated defense dialogue held in Washington, Seoul said Thursday the two countries have reconfirmed that the North's fourth nuclear test, its intercontinental ballistic missile, and submarine-launched ballistic missile launches are a grave threat not only to Seoul-Washington alliance, but also to the world's peace and security. The two allies also called on Pyongyang to give up its nuclear arms in a, quote, complete, verifiable, and irreversible way in their biannual defense talks. Pyongyang has risen to be a great concern in regional security after forging ahead with a nuclear test, long-range missile, and SLBM launches this year. What's more, the possibility of another nuke test at the regime's Punggye-ri nuclear test site, the same location where the previous 4 tests were held, remains unchanged.
North Korea has completed preparations for a test at the Punggye-ri test site. We are continuously monitoring the developments there.
Recent satellite imagery at Punggye-ri showed low levels of activity at main portals, and vehicles from the command center have withdrawn, suggesting a test is not expected anytime soon. But South Korean military officials are keeping close tabs of the nuclear test site, not ruling out the possibility of Pyongyang carrying out a surprise nuclear test at the least expected moment. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
North Korea's once-in-a-generation Workers' Party Congress came to an end a few days ago, with concerts and parades being held to keep the festive mood ongoing, or that's at least what the regime seems to want to portray. Well, with a leader boasting a grander title than his predecessors and the party members pledging to make North Korea the greatest place on earth, our Kim Jung-soo reports life remains tough for the North Korean people as the regime tries to boost the economy amid heavy sanctions.
North Korea's Workers' Party Congress officially ended on May 9th, but the regime is doing its best to preserve the spirit of upbeat solidarity forged during the event with follow-up concerts and campaigns, with mixed results. On Wednesday, the regime staged a concert to commemorate the once-in-a-generation event. The main attraction at Pyongyang's 10,000-seat stadium was the North's first all-women group, the Boranbong Band. The group sang praises of the Workers' Party, while a video playing in the background showed some of the regime's iconic technological achievements. On the same day, according to North Korean media, the Congress attendees gathered at the April 25th Cultural Center in Pyongyang to sign a separate pledge of allegiance, vying to help their leader Kim Jong-un, who was given the highest title of chairman of the party during the convention, in developing the communist state into the world's greatest utopia. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, the regime made another statement directed towards its people, declaring the start of the Malima Speed Development Campaign, which urged workers to have the mindset of a restless workhorse so that they can contribute to the nation's frantic race for economic growth. Despite efforts to keep the momentum of the North's most important political event in 36 years, it also appears that the 7th Workers' Party Congress could have actually amplified the public's resentment towards Kim Jong-un. North Korean sources who got in touch with Japanese media on Thursday revealed that many people are in fact dissatisfied with the event, criticizing how it was beneficial only for the party's high-ranking officials and not the public. Kim Jung-soo, Arirang News.
Now, earlier this year, the Korean government laid out measures to slow down the explosive pace of mortgage lending in this country. While they have proven relatively successful in curbing lending at Korea's biggest banks, there are downsides beginning to show as well. Our Shin Se-min zooms in on the side effects.
The government's introduction of tougher lending requirements was meant to control Korea's mounting household debt, but it has sparked some issues of its own. In February, the Financial Services Commission stepped in, ordering commercial banks to start screening mortgage applicants more carefully. Under the Commission's mandatory guidelines, banks are required to base their decision on a household's ability to repay the principal and the interest together. Before, banks had extended handsome grace periods to help applicants push back the payment burden. The move came as Korea's household debt reached an all-time high of $1.02 trillion in February, growing $104 billion in the space of a year. The Bank of Korea says the pace of mortgage loan growth from commercial banks slowed by $1.6 billion in the first 3 months of the year compared to the same period last year. But loans taken from secondary financial institutions, where interest rates are generally much higher, hit $217 billion as of February, the highest figure tallied since the central bank started collecting related data in 2003. It's not a healthy trend, according to market watchers.
Most of the loans taken out from secondary and tertiary financial institutions are by borrowers that are more vulnerable in their financial standing. This will in turn become a much heavier burden on them should the key interest rates surge in the future.
On top of that, the property market, which got a boost from government-led monetary stimulus measures, appears to be in a downturn. In its latest report, Korea Development Institute said the 26% on-year drop in home transactions in the first quarter comes in well below a 5-year average. Experts say purchasing sentiment was dragged down by the new lending guidelines. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Well, speaking of household expenses, in Korea, the number of single-person households has been on the rise in recent years, launching new trends along the way. As such, challenges regarding living expenses have also surfaced among this group. Our Lee Shin takes a closer look.
The number of single-person households in Korea corresponded to 25% of the entire population in 2012. And is expected to rise up to 34% within 23 years. The rising number has prompted new trends and lifestyle patterns along with daily obstacles, including management of expenses. A survey conducted by Statistics Korea revealed that food expenses comprised the largest portion of spending among single-person households last year, followed by housing expenditures. But according to reports by Korea Consumers Agency released on Thursday, the majority of people who live alone said housing fees are their biggest financial struggle.
Overall, my monthly spending is around $1,400. Of that sum, I use about $700 in rent. In reality, it's almost impossible to get an inexpensive apartment for a single person. $700 is actually relatively cheap for a single bedroom.
More than half of the people who participate in the survey also responded by saying that more affordable studios or one-bedroom apartments could be the fundamental solution to their financial struggles. Experts at the Consumer Agency added that an increase in the production of housing supplies such as furniture targeted only towards single-person households could also help this growing demographic group reduce their spending on basic necessities. Lee Shin, Arirang News.
The deeper we dig into the Oxy-Rekid Benkizer's toxic humidifier sterilizer case, the more we learn of inconvenient truth that had been buried underneath. Our Lee Min-young brings us up to speed on the developing Oxy investigation case.
The investigation on Oxy-Rekid Benkiser is underway, with the nation's prosecution saying there is evidence potentially indicating the company knew about the dangers of a chemical in its products. The company used PHMG, a dangerous toxic industrial chemical known to cause fatal respiratory conditions, as a base material for its humidifier sterilizers. According to the prosecution, Oxy had been using a chemical substance called Preventol R80 as a source material for their sterilizers until the late 1990s. But when customers complained that it didn't work very well and left a white residue on the humidifiers, they decided to use PHMG as a substitute starting in 2000. The company sold about 5 million humidifier disinfectants between the time Oxy started using PHMG until Korea's health ministry banned sales of products with the chemical in August 2011. Before going ahead with PHMG, Oxy is recorded to have asked for data on inhalation toxicity tests, indicating the company was aware tests were needed. But tests were skipped nonetheless. And when Oxy's new humidifier sterilizer containing PHMG came onto the market, the ad copy said it was safe for both adults and children. Prosecutors say that Oxy may have been under pressure to reduce production costs, but environmental organizations argue that rather than cost, the company was just careless.
Inhalation toxicity tests weren't usually done by companies that deal with chemicals, and as humidifier sterilizers use watered-down disinfectants, I think they just thought it would be okay.
Oxy denies any charges of wrongdoing, repeating that they were completely unaware of the potential danger of the product. Activists believe Oxy is just trying to avoid punishment. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
It's been a bit over a year since the Korean government boosted the price of cigarettes from a little over $2 per packet to roughly $4. Well, the reason behind it was to curb the nation's smoking rate. Roughly 28 months later, we take a look at whether the price hike has or is proving to be effective. Arirang News, Hwang Ho-jun.
10 billion packs decreased in sales since the government raised the price. You can't really compare that to any other anti-smoking policy.
Ever since the government decided to hike up the prices of cigarettes, the habit has become somewhat of a burden to smokers' wallets. According to a recent survey, 1 out of 4 smokers answered their smoking habits have been affected after the 2015 price hike on tobacco. About 13% have quit smoking, less than 10% are smoking less, and little over 2% have switched over to e-cigarettes due to the higher price.
The price is almost the same as that of a meal. It makes you think again before you smoke.
I think it's going to affect I'm from the States, so if that were to happen there, like in California, that would absolutely affect, for any vice that I have, that would affect my spending habits, absolutely.
Although the survey shows there are indeed fewer people who smoke tobacco cigarettes, there are concerns about the rising number of e-cigarette smokers. In fact, the rate of e-cigarette use among Korean men soared to 7.1% in 2015 from 2% in 2013 and 4.4% in 2014.
It feels cheaper because all you need to do is change the liquid cartridges every now and then.
Imports of e-cigarettes have been on the rise as well. The Korea Customs Service said imported e-cigarettes totaled $13.5 million in 2015, an increase from $2.3 million in 2013 and $10.1 million in 2014. Some believe that e-cigarette is a healthier option, but is it?
The vapor still contains carcinogens, and because there are far more companies that produce e-cigarettes, the toxins are all different by companies, which makes it harder to regulate.
Chewing gum, patches, and now e-cigarettes. The options you could choose to quit the habit are numerous. But with no alternative being free of other risks, seems like the best way is to go cold turkey, which in the long term is guaranteed to put less burden on one's wallet and health. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Nicholas Franz Wessels fought in the Korean War. After the war ended, he returned home to the Netherlands. More than 60 years later, Wessels is back in Korea to be laid to rest here in this country alongside his brothers-in-arms who lost their lives in the war. Our Kim Hyun-bin brings us his story from Busan.
Nicholas Franz Wessels was a Korean War veteran from the Netherlands. He fought fearlessly against North Korean and Chinese troops during his deployment to Korea in 1953. He was fortunate to survive the war and live a long, full life, but many of his comrades were not as lucky. His family said he always thought of his fallen brothers, and Korea had a special place in his heart. Mr. Wessels died in April 2015 at the age of 85. His final request was to be buried with his fellow soldiers at the UN Memorial Cemetery in Busan. He got his wish.
I feel very proud, of course, that the Korean government and the Korean people made it possible also to bury my father again on Korean soil after he died last year. Yeah, it's hard to say what I feel right now. Emotions and proud, but I'm happy that my father is here for his last resting place.
With the help of Korea's Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, Mr. Wessels can now rest peacefully alongside his brothers in arms. Mr. Wessels' family members, the Dutch ambassador to Korea, and other Dutch veterans from the Korean War attended the burial ceremony on Thursday. The cemetery in the southern city of Busan is a resting ground of 2,300 UN soldiers from the Korean War, 117 of them hailed from the Netherlands. Mr. Wessels is the fourth Korean War veteran to be buried in the cemetery since 2015.
If Korean War veterans want to be buried here in the future, we have over 2,000 vacant plots here at the UN Memorial Cemetery, and the government will offer its full support.
In May of last year, the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs changed the rules to allow the international transfer of remains from a veteran's home country to the cemetery, so veterans of the war could be laid to rest in Korea. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Busan.
Seoul is a city rich with impressive modern landmarks, countless shopping venues, and quaint little streets full of cultural heritage and delicious eateries. But arriving here for the first time can be a little overwhelming if you don't know your way around. Well, worry no more, as the Korean capital has become the first city in the world to offer tour guides on the streets of Seoul so that visitors no longer need to waste time and energy tracking down information centers and wandering around to look for places to eat. Red Angels, they're called. Our news feature tonight with Oh Soo-young.
More than 10 million tourists come to Seoul every year, drawn by the hundreds of attractions from traditional palaces and temples to glitzy shopping streets. But for first-time visitors, working out where to go or how to get there is never an easy task.
All year round, Red Angels in the capital help visitors from all over the world make their way around the city, giving directions, providing translation and offering tourist information.
The guides are easy to spot, decked out in red from head to toe, and their pockets are loaded with colourful maps in English, Chinese and Japanese. These angels get an early start to the day before tourists begin to hit the local attractions. They put on their matching uniforms and pack their bags with leaflets and brochures before heading out to 10 of the city's most popular tourist hotspots, including Myeongdong, Hongdae, Shinsadong and Bukchon.
Many foreign visitors don't know where the tourist information offices are when they need help. So through our Red Angel program, we reach out to visitors first on the streets. We offer tourist information, of course, but we also help visitors when they need emergency services or when they're looking for lost property.
Red Angels help around 2,000 to 3,000 visitors a day, which amounts to more than 2 million a year. That's more than double the number of visitors who seek out tourist information offices in Seoul. The Red Angel program began in 2009 and was the first in the world to offer these unique services all year round.
I come to Korea frequently. I'm grateful every time because the guys dressed in red are always friendly and help me out.
They help me find my way around Seoul much faster than I would on my own.
I've never seen it before. Usually I have to find a map or some sort of tourist booth. There's never anyone on the street to just talk to directly, so it's pretty handy.
With its warm and hospitable services drawing a positive response from visitors, the Red Angel program is now expanding to other cities in Korea and around the world.
So far, we've introduced the program to Japan and Sri Lanka. Japan launched it last year in the Ueno and Shinjuku districts. It seems Tokyo has adopted the program ahead of the Olympics in 2020.
Keeping up its shining example, Seoul's Tourism Association says it will continue to expand the Red Angel program in response to changing tourist patterns and popular destinations. While the Red Angels are all the more determined to keep helping visitors to the best of their abilities.
I constantly remind myself as I work that our hospitality elevates our national image in the eyes of our foreign guests.
I don't think you could hear so many thank yous working in any other occupation. At the end of the day, a smile and a word of thanks from our tourists fills me with pride.
With help always just around the corner, tourists no longer need to worry about getting lost in the hustle and bustle of Korea's buzzing capital. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, Brazil's Senate has voted to put President Dilma Rousseff on trial over a corruption scandal. And as the country battles a deep recession, many blame on the president. Bruce Harrison joins me live in the studio. Now, Bruce, how did this historic decision play out?
Kyung-young, it was not a close vote. Senators voted 55 to 22 in favor of the trial, and that came after 20 hours of debate, speeches in Brasilia. The vote also suspends Rousseff from the presidency for the duration of the impeachment trial.
A role she may really never return to, depending on the outcome of the trial.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so what is next in this impeachment process?
Well, as soon as she was suspended, Vice President Michel Temer assumed the presidency. Now it happens the Senate trial will move forward. They have 180 days to conduct the trial, meaning Rousseff could be suspended during the Summer Olympics in August. The president is accused of breaking budget rules ahead of her 2014 re-election.
Throughout the course of the next few months, we can calmly debate, based on the facts, whether impeachable crimes were committed or not.
A two-thirds majority is needed in the Senate to impeach Rousseff, but the lopsided vote to put her on trial suggests the opposition already has the necessary support. Many Brazilians claiming Rousseff sunk the economy celebrated in the streets after the decision.
It's so exciting. All our effort were worth it. There was a lot of suffering. I suffered so much, I nearly died, but I'm here fighting for my children. I'm so happy.
According to the BBC, senators in support of Rousseff described the impeachment proceedings as a takeover of power disguised as impeachment and born of hatred and revenge. The president is expected to give a speech later Thursday. A new national poll shows U.S. presidential candidates Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are in a statistical tie if the two were to face off in the general election. The Reuters Ipsos poll found 41% of likely voters supporting Democrat Clinton and 40% backing Republican Trump, with 19% undecided. The two likely nominees have already shifted their focus to attacking each other ahead of party conventions.
I will stand up and fight for and speak out for every American that he attacks and he insults. We are better than that, and we will act like that.
Trump is the presumptive Republican nominee and is likely to face a lot of pressure to clean up his language.
Well, hopefully so. But Bruce, the same poll last week that we saw, Clinton had an 11-point lead over Trump. What happened?
Yeah, that quickly crumbled. Most likely, according to political analyst, Trump won in West Virginia and Nebraska, and just days before that, he won Indiana, which made him the presumptive nominee. Also, Clinton lost West Virginia to Bernie Sanders, who is still sticking around, in every loss, even close wins rather, highlight the weaknesses of her campaign.
Well, it definitely seems like both the Republicans and Democrats have a hard time rallying support behind a single candidate. So we'll have to wait to see how that story develops. All right, Bruce, thank you so much for that coverage.
No problem.
Well, sunshine, sunshine, and some more sunshine. That's what we had throughout the day here in the nation's capital, and it seems like it was just a taste of what's in store for the weeks to come. For more on the weather update, let's head straight over to our Lee Ji-hyun at the Weather Center. Ji-hyun.
Well, not surprisingly, Kyung-young, today's UV index reached very high levels across the nation, and today's sunny conditions was strong enough to cause sunburn when exposed directly without protection for 30 minutes or more.
Right, and I do remember seeing somewhere that UV rays are the strongest in the months of May and June, so it's really critical that you protect yourself with the sunblock from the sun at this time of the year.
Right, and as most of us felt in the country, this is just the beginning of hotter days to come. Tomorrow will be even warmer in the capital, while southern provinces will have much cooler readings due to lots of clouds. And sporadic rain is in the forecast for the upper regions of the country, but things will get brighter as the morning moves along and sunny skies will be featured all day long. And on to tomorrow's temperature readings. Daily low here in Seoul and Daejeon will start out at 13 degrees Celsius, 15 for Busan. And as for the daily highs, Seoul will top out at 25 degrees Celsius, while Busan and Jeju will see a high of 22 and 21. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that is our broadcast on this Thursday night. I'm Moon Gan-young. Hope you enjoyed our show tonight. For our viewers in other parts of the world, have a good one. For those of you here in Korea and across Asia, a good night from Seoul.